What we're going to be talking about today is network and security checklist. I've collected a bunch of resources that I'm hoping will be useful. I use them on my network, some of my friends use them on their networks. We're going to be looking at what should you be doing with your servers, with your workstations, with your iPhones and iTouches and everything else that's out there. Apple iOS, there's some hardening checklists out there for those. So as we look at multiple different platforms, multiple different devices, I'm trying to give you just a ton of resources that way you can say, this is what we can do. Also, walk around your network, find out what's out there, because I have found in most of academia there's a lot of stuff that gets put on our network that we never authorized. At least that's been my experience. So as we go through this, first of all, I want to say I am not a lawyer. For legal advice, please consult a lawyer. We are going to look at some state laws, some federal laws, as far as what our responsibility is for keeping information confidential and secure. As we're doing checklists, there are security checklists, so you please need to seek your legal counsel to make sure what laws apply for your region. One of the big shifts that's happening in our environment is the big data centers that used to be in the old time are now being replaced with cloud vendors. And I know a lot of student information systems are being moved out. A lot of information back and forth between us and the state government's being moved back and forth over the internet. As we're doing this, what security do we need to have for us to be legally protected and for the students to also be safe? First of all, on-premise security controls. When you're dealing with a vendor who says, hey, we'll host your data for you, that's fine. But what kind of premises do they have? Do they have someone from the outside testing their security systems? You don't have to get the report. You just want to verify and be able to call and say, hey, I understand you're testing such and such company. I just want to see that have they been proactive in getting the issues resolved. Backup. One of the things when someone else has your data, how do you know that the data is being backed up? Have you ever gone through and said, hey, I want to do a restore of the backup today to verify that their backup is actually real and that the data is accurate? Next thing is really kind of a sticky one, which is authentication and authorization. When you're dealing with authentication to a cloud system, what's your password strength? And I'm not talking about crazy complex letters. You'll find out that the research has proven over and over, length is much more important than complex. Yes, you need to have some uppercase and lowercase and some numbers. If you've got that and you've got length, you're doing fine. The other thing is, are they whitelisting or blacklisting IP ranges? Can they say, we can only have a connection between our site and your site over this particular IP? Now you need to remember, that's not a foolproof connection method. That's not an encrypted connection, because there's something called IP spoofing where I can pretend I'm somebody else's address and still get to your data. But it's a good step. Login hours and timeouts. Do they say you cannot be logged in after certain hours, or do they say, if we're noticing there's no activity going over this for an hour, or however 15, 20 minutes, we are cutting off your session and you're going to have to re-authenticate to our system. What about account lockouts? If someone's typing in their password wrong, if they do it 8, 9, 10 times, how do you know that, oh, their system's trying to be hacked by an automated script? There should be an automatic lockout. And in my opinion, it shouldn't just time back in. It should be an administrator has to do this because that's something that they need to know about. The other thing is access control by the vendor and by you. Who has access to your data? Does everyone on the vendor site have access, or do just certain people? That's a big question. Same thing with your site. Who has access to your data? And then the last thing is you need to encrypt all communications between the remote site and the corporate infrastructures, which means if my data is being housed somewhere else, every type of connection and communication I have, whether it's email, whether it's a database connection, no matter what type of connection it is, it better be encrypted. That connection needs to be encrypted. Cloud vendor security continued. Is there encryption of internal and external? For example, the HTTPS needs to be on there, or SSL or TLS for a database connection. All of this stuff needs to be encrypted when it's going back and forth, both internally when it's stored and when it's being across. If social security numbers and passwords or personal identifiable information is being used, it should be stored in some type of hashed algorithm. When it's on the database, it should not be in plain text. It should be in some type of hashed format. Do they have a data leak loss prevention? Which is, what are we doing on our site at the school? What are we doing to make sure only the proper people have authorization to the data? On the vendor side, leak loss prevention, which is typically when the vendor is hosting the data. Now again, we're looking if you're dealing with a cloud solution. Then we want to make sure that what controls do they have in place to make sure your data is not getting out. Both of these agreements should be a part of your service level agreement. Who has access to what data when and what's being done to protect the vendor and to protect you. Audit trails. Who did what when? How do we know if there's any audit trails on the system? That's one of the questions you need to ask. What are they doing for denial of service protection? We switched over to a web-based email system going through a vendor, and at that time it was Google. We're now using Microsoft Live, the Live EDU. Both have their pluses and minuses, but one of the times, Google had a denial of service for 4 hours. We had no email coming in and out for 4 hours. Now, that's not the end of the world, but that still was a loss, and it still impacted us. Never send unencrypted personal identifiable information or confidential information by email. That's just a huge red flag. That's sending it on a postcard. And render all personal identifiable information in unreadable format when it's stored. So when it's stored on the database, it shouldn't be readable. It should be encrypted. It shouldn't be in plain text. Let's look at what happened with Gawker. Look at their top passwords here. You see 123456, password, ABC123, monkey. You're seeing a lot of passwords. And here what I've done is I've provided a couple links. And one of the things I would ask the vendor to do is to say, Twitter has 370 passwords that they say you cannot use because those are such bad passwords and anybody can guess them. So, and there's a list right here on this page, video here that's on YouTube that talks about the 10 worst passwords. So an ABC123, 123456 are both in there. And those are ones I've seen used so much. Passwords should be at least 10 characters long. And this is something that I would challenge you to push your vendor to get to that compliance. Yes, I know staff will whine, and so will parents and the students. But honestly, you're doing it for their protection. Best practices with Social Security numbers, and this is coming from the Social Security Administration. First of all, assign another primary identifier. They should not be using their Social Security number. Comply with state regulations, and there's a lot of state regulations. I've got more listed on my website. I'll be putting more up on Edmodo here pretty soon. Also inform the students whenever you're using Social Security number, they're supposed to be able to know about it. Remove Social Security numbers. We removed them out of our system, then we had to put them back because our State Department for the grants and scholarships required them to be in there. So we had to put them back in there. Again, they should be hashed when they're stored. Updating the computer systems. Make sure that they're hashed or encrypted. The Social Security numbers are only displaying the last 4 when you're actually seeing them. Make sure all transmission of Social Security numbers is done through a secure form, no matter how you're transmitting them. And some states classify academic records as private personal identifiable information. And then those laws, the PII laws, stand in effect for those. And you need to know, check your State Department to find out. Common 10 security flaws. Let's look at them. Usually they'll buy a firewall or something, they'll put it in place, done. Especially in academia. They'll set it in place, then they'll forget it. That is the worst you can do. It's thinking you have protection when you don't. Opening more firewall ports than necessary. This is huge. We've had to say, no, these are the firewall ports we're opening. Let's get it to tunnel through these firewall ports, which still is not a perfect solution by any means, but the least amount of ports you have open, the less likely someone's going to be able to hack in. Lots of times people put multiple services on a single server. Now that especially we're running virtual, so many people are doing that, and you're putting so many services on one machine. When that one machine fails, you're really up a creek. Ignoring workstations. I've gone around and seen workstations that are so out of date. You go down, you look in the business office, you look in the nurse's office. Oh my goodness, some of the computers are running. That's one of the things you need to make sure that they're being patched and updated. Failing to use SSL encryption when it counts. Whenever you're transmitting personal information, oh, that's okay, I'll just email it to them. No, you need to make sure it's secure. Using self-signed certificates. One of the problems, now I use a self-signed certificate for my wireless, but my users never see it because it's built in, because we have one-on-one laptops. It's already set in. They never know about it. So they're not giving some type of authorization. Through group policy, I have it all a part of my system. But otherwise, you're getting users used to saying, oh yeah, it's okay that this isn't the proper encryption. That's not a good thing to get users used to doing. Excessive security logging. I just want to touch on this a second because a lot of people will be they'll log everything. There's no way you can read all the logs. Make sure you're just getting exactly what you need from your security logs. Check your Active Directory security logs. Check your main top firewall logs. Cut it down to a reasonable amount. Randomly grouping virtual servers. For example, I would not put a firewall or an external facing server with personal inside confidential data out on the same physical host. I would make sure that those are running on separate hosts. So my virtual firewalls and stuff like that, those are running on a totally independent host from my internal stuff. Placing member servers in your DMZ. To me, again, this is just not a good security practice because there's so many ways to hack into a member server. And because of that, to me, I want a couple layers of protection. Depending on users to install updates. Now that is the joke of the day. If you think a user is going to install updates, no. We've had to go to where we automatically install the updates and we force their machines to reboot. We give them a warning, but it automatically reboots. There's nothing they can do. They can't stop it. Because if you don't, they'll never reboot, especially with the laptops. Where are we standing today as far as the security threat? You know, it used to be you put in a firewall, and this is where we get the firewall, set it and forget it. And we're good. No, most of the hacks today are coming in through web pages. It's not that they're coming in through the ports, and they are still some. There's definitely that happening. But more of what you're seeing is people are clicking on stuff on web pages and they're downloading it. And the antivirus and the spyware can't keep up with it. So that's one of the things. They're getting very dynamic. They're changing. So they're getting past these signature-based systems. And this is where you need layer 7 aware firewalls, layer 7 aware appliances or software as a service, one of those type of things. And that's one of the things that's happening. There is a big shift in network to move away from a dedicated appliance that is a set it and forget it appliance, a security appliance, to something that is a software as a service where they are monitoring what's happening on your system. Because they'll have the security experts that we don't have the time to be, or that someone else doesn't have the time to be. And one of the things is also looking at layer 7 filtering, and then which has changed the whole network is, you know, appliance type of devices to, and the NACs that used to be in place to control who get on my network. Well, now we're not just worried about who's on my network, but we're worried about what they're doing on the network. Even authorized users because of Facebook and Twitter and all these other hacks that are out there. So as you can see, originally there was IP reputation, then there was domain reputation. Well, I know this is a good site. Well, now I can have a good site. Facebook's usually good, but sometimes there's malware on Facebook, or there's malware on CNN, or there's malware on, you know, it could be anywhere. Yahoo, who knows? So you have to really have layer 7 that's saying, wait a minute, that's a piece of malware trying to come in. Let's look at the daily security checklist. You always start off the day, cup of coffee, and then verify your current connections. As you sit down looking at that, what are the connections coming into your firewall? What are the connections going out? That's really important to make sure. Look at the network traffic statistics, and you're seeing the amount of traffic. You're not just worried about the connections that are coming in, but are you seeing a big glut of a certain type? Look at your antivirus logs. Read your security logs on your domain servers. Check for new security patches every day. Those are the important places, especially some of your big systems. The next thing is, then you need to go out and meet and brief. And you need to brief your administration if there's some stuff. Hey, we've got some big Windows patches we need to put on. We've got some firewall stuff. We're going to have to take the system offline. It's a 0-day exploit. We just found out about it. We need to get this patched and fixed. And that's letting people know what's going on. Instead of just calling them, seeing your face and talking face to face builds a lot more rapport. Check more logs. Have you checked your backup logs, your firewall logs, your outgoing, what's leaving your network? I would set them to automatically go to your phone. You can do this with some help desk software. One of the help desk softwares that we use is Spiceworks. It is free, and it has all types of different alert systems that can come into my phone. Whether it's an iPhone, whether it's a Droid, whatever you want to use, it doesn't matter. And then turn your knowledge into action. Once you're seeing that, oh, wait a minute, I've got a lot of traffic going out my firewall. I don't normally have traffic going out on this particular port. Something's going on. You need to close it down. You need to take some actions. Find out if someone's doing something you're not expecting. Now let's take a look at when I've helped some different schools when they've had a security breach. Now what do? First thing I always say is, what's your plan? What's your policies? Unfortunately, a lot of times I hear that they don't have a plan or a policy. So before you have a security breach, please make a plan, get a policy, get that in place. Then, after you have that happen, first thing you probably want to do is consider hiring a forensic specialist, because you might have to collect this data, because depending upon what was breached and how it was breached determines your liability. And however you tamper with the data, you can become liable. As you assess the damages done, remove the services. I have no problem unplugging network cords just to shut them off, but you don't power down the machines. Sometimes you have to bring law enforcement in and say, hey, we have not touched these machines, we've seen what's on here, there's inappropriate content. Someone put child pornography or something like that on there, heaven forbid. But if that happened, if you start doing stuff, then you're responsible for what's happened to that data. Alert your legal department, document whatever you do. Make sure it's very well documented and witnessed by someone. Begin locking down your system. If it's all okay and you can start locking down your system, get the bank involved if you're dealing with any type of credit card information. Contact the families, employers, suppliers affected by the breach. And then have a set of recovery plans in case a breach occurs again. And this is one of the areas where I absolutely love being a completely virtual environment as far as my servers, because I can go to a backup and pull in a server and be up and going in a matter of hours. If I had to, I could literally unplug a set of servers. I've got another set of servers that I can turn on, put the ones that are not infected, that are a month old, maybe a month old as far as that, and then I'll pull the backups, but then I can bring my firewalls and everything else up that have not been compromised and get us back online. There's a bunch of staff security forms that I've put on my website, and we'll go out and take a look at that. 10 things you should know about FARPA. And then confidentiality. What is our responsibility? It's a PowerPoint that I use for training our staff and actually our student workers that are dealing with any type of confidential information. You're welcome to use it. You're welcome to change it, put your name on it. And then our GCA privacy training for staff and student workers. We do a quiz after we do the PowerPoint just to verify that they actually hopefully paid attention some. Confidentiality pledge for contractors. When a contractor comes on site, first thing I typically do is greet them at the door if I know they're going to be working with my data, and I have them sign a non-disclosure and a confidentiality agreement. And then I'm putting this in here, cyberbullying policy. I've dealt with a lot of schools where they're saying, yeah, we need to get a cyberbullying policy. We really haven't developed one. Here's one that we have in our school. You're welcome to use it. A fax cover sheet for medical information. The Colorado Department of Education has a great checklist that they've made for FARPA. And it's just real simple going down through, yes, no, yes, no, yes, we've done this, yes, we've done this. And I've downloaded it from their website. I would highly recommend. There's also Cloud Security Guidance by IBM, another very good resource when you're dealing with that. And then vCloud Security for VMware. This is specifically if you're running VMware for your virtualization, which a lot of people are. They've got it's a rather thick, long set of guidelines, not just a checklist, but it's a rather thick manual, but it's really well done on how to harden and how to make sure that your VMs are secure. And again, these resources are on my website, which is es-es.net. An internal auditing checklist. One of the things that we do is we have an internal audit review update, which basically is a high-level view, which I take to the school administration, to the school board, and say, hey, here's where we are with our network security. Here's the areas where I feel like we could improve. Here's some areas that I think we're doing okay. And then they can kind of look at it, and then they sign off. We can say, well, I can spend this much more money to get us this much more secure, or we can live with this risk, because it's always a risk, money basically balance, where you're saying, okay, we can this much risk we can accept. And then here's the self-audit general controls, which I did a little bit of updating this January. And I worked with a team of people. We came up with this. You're welcome to use it. The only thing I put in this January was stuff dealing more with mobile devices, because that's changed. Microsoft Security Compliance Toolkit is a fantastic toolkit resource. And then here's a worksheet, and you can download it from their website. And it's a FARPA compliance. It's designed more for university level, to be honest, but the information in there we can pull and use in a K-12 environment very nicely. And they also have one for HIPAA authorization. And if you're running a medical clinic, or if you're a nurse, depending upon the services she provides, depending on where you land in FARPA, all that kind of stuff, just take a look at this. Again, the more secure we are with the students' data, the more the parents are going to trust us. And then I also have an auditor's data system checklist. And now these are kind of designed to be internal documents to see how are we handling the data. What are we doing? What are our procedures? What are our policies? And seeing if they're actually working. Here's a computer help desk list that I like to use. 10 things about HP. And these are HP printers. This is an old document from Tech Republic, but it's fantastic. And it doesn't matter whether you're using HP printers, Canon, Lexmark, I don't care what you're using. The same rules apply, and it really helps when I'm training in my help desk staff, so that way they really understand how to fix paper jams. What are the error codes? Computer maintenance security checklist, and it just goes down through step by step. I have another one here on computer account access, and it's really good. It's done by Tech Republic, where basically they're saying if you're going to get access, and it's just a checklist, and you can, these are templates, you can modify them, copy and paste them into Word. Some of these are PDFs, some of these are Word documents, and then a server deployment and migration checklist by Tech Republic, which is a really fantastic one where you're going through, if we're going to be deploying servers, what are the services going to be on here? So that way you kind of have a list of this. Now, again, I use Spiceworks for my help desk software, and I've given an authorization through Active Directory just to go right in and pull all the sources, all the services, everything that's being pulled off my servers, so that way I know what's actually running on my servers, and then it gives me alerts and notifications if anything changes. A tune-up checklist, which is for PCs, a malware removal checklist. This is fantastic. I've given this out to several parents and students who have their personal computers. I'm having this problem. Just go through this, and you can see if you're cleaning up the stuff that you have. NATO codes. We do a lot of telephone support, and because of the telephone support, it helps the students to realize, that whiskey, foxtrot, when they're doing the different letters of the alphabet, especially when we have different accents and different people from across the country, they're calling in and asking for help. A laptop checkout form. We have loaner laptops, so I'm just kind of giving you an idea. We track the loaner laptops. Whenever something comes in or goes out as far as equipment, it's just one of the forms we use. And then an imaging checklist, because we do image our laptops, and then after we image, we have a set of procedures. Again, it's just kind of an idea. If you're doing a one-to-one laptop program, it's a checklist, something you can use. Now let's look at server maintenance. What would you do on a daily basis? The daily checklist is the following things. First, we're going to look at the server health status of all the servers. Then you're going to look up the backup results. Hope they should be normal, I hope. And then email queue and throughput. How's your email system doing? Is the email coming through? That's one of the major communications to a lot of parents and a lot of students. The next thing is virus scan results. Go pull it up. If you're using, something that ties into your patch management system and it gives you a report, or whatever antivirus software, pull up its reports at Center Console. You should be using a Center Console system where you can look and see what's happening across your network. The next thing is time synchronization on the servers. This is very important when you're running virtual servers. I've seen more headaches and more people call me saying, oh, we can't log in. It's time restriction, or it's this, or it's that. Have you checked to make sure your Active Directory servers or whatever servers you're using, are they synchronized to the right time? Oh, no, they're not. You change out a firewall. Sometimes that'll knock out your time synchronization. I've seen it happen. What should you be doing on a weekly basis? Checklist should include the following routines. Check your event logs. Check server performance. How much RAM is it using? How much is it close to capacity? Check your security logs for possible attacks. Notice I'm not doing this every single day. I'm looking at some things every day, but then I'm looking a little more in detail on a weekly basis. Check your antivirus alerts. Install any software updates. Look at your system kernel updates, reboot a schedule, and you need to schedule that with your customer, with your students and your staff. Now, we try to run pretty much a 24/7 shop, but I do take from basically midnight to 4 in the morning to do my reboots and all of that kind of stuff. Backup important data over SSL encryption, stored to a remote location, is my recommendation. Security issues, for example, use the weekly reports. There are several different companies out there that have or produce weekly reports as far as what's happening in security fields. You might want to take a look at them and see if you have any products that are affected. On a monthly basis, what should I be doing with my servers? Checklist will include the following routines. Have you defragmented your hard drive? And how's the health? People don't realize, well, it's a virtual machine. Virtual machines are actually very susceptible to having fragments all over the place, depending on how you're allocating the space. It's very highly recommended. VMware highly recommends it. Microsoft recommends that you do a defrag on the virtual machine. Check your RAID health. I've had that bite me more than once. Verify your database integrity. Perform full security audit. Do a full backup of all your virtual machines to an off-site. Again, this is something I do every month. We basically have a home leave or a break about once every month to 6 weeks because we're a boarding institution. And during that time, I usually take one of the nights and part of the day, and we just back everything up off to virtual. We shut down all our virtual machines, we back them up to external storage, and we take them off-site. Delete all your old VM snapshots. They can take up a lot of space. On the switches and routers, what do we do on a weekly basis? Notice I'm not doing anything on switches on a daily basis. But on a weekly basis, I'm basically looking at the event logs. I'm checking the device performance. I'm checking security logs for possible attacks. I'm looking at links and the throughput. I'm looking at the interface errors, collisions, input errors, etc. Now I will check a little more often if I know someone's out digging around where my fiber is. I've had issues with that before. Install security updates. And I would say this is not only what I do for switches and routers, but also on printers. Install system kernel updates, reboot, and again, you should schedule that with whoever's working in the office. On a monthly basis, what should I be doing? I should be performing configuration backups on your switches, which again, like I said, there's a lot of different things. Spiceworks has some plugins. Depending upon your set of switches, it can download that stuff and pull it in. Perform configuration consistency audit, perform full security audit. Network checklist. This is where I've pulled together a bunch of resources for you. Again, these are on my website, es-es.net, but a checklist for deploying server 2008 in your forest root domain. Employee separation. When your employees leave, how do you handle it? Are you collecting their stuff? Are you disabling their accounts? I've seen a lot of places that's really sloppy in a lot of academic institutions, both private and public that I've dealt with. Network documentation checklist. It's a good baseline starting point. It's a little bit older of a document done by Tech Republic again. If you are noticing something, Tech Republic has a lot of these great documents that are free out there that you can go download. I highly recommend getting a free membership, if not going ahead and paying for the pro membership, which is $80 a month, or $80 a year. A maintenance checklist, which is a more comprehensive checklist, and then securing the Mac operating system, both server and workstation. I've got some different documents on my website for that, and then Apple iOS. There's a hardening checklist. It was actually, I think it was the University of Arizona that I pulled it from. They had a great list of resources. This is what you need to do to secure your Apple iOS. And by the way, if you're looking at the top vulnerabilities for 2010, Apple was at the top. So they had the most amount of vulnerabilities versus all the other systems for the number of systems that they have out there. Network checklist 2. I would get a network maintenance checklist. It's a brief checklist that was done by a typical vendor. It kind of gives you an idea of what they're doing and then what I would do. And I've taken, like I said, I pulled a lot of resources from these. Also, there's a new user form, which I think came from Tech Republic, but it's so old, I honestly don't remember where I got it from. A Microsoft Windows Security Guide, Survival Guide. There's tons of links and resources Microsoft has pulled together for securing 2008. There's a lot more granularity in Server 2008. If you've not made the jump, I highly recommend it because you can really tighten down the hatches a lot better with Server 2008. Server change control form. I don't know about you, but I've had walked in places where someone did this on the server, then somebody else did this on the server. Depending upon how the IT is structured, it's really important to make sure that that is all documented so you're not undoing what somebody else did for a good reason. Cloud Security Guidance by IBM. First thing you need to realize when you're dealing with your system and your network, if you're trying to keep it running smoothly, you need to know your system. What's the hardware that's out there? What software is installed? What are the versions? What's my licensing? You know, what services are running and how much, what are the resources are they taking up and why am I running those? And which ones are exposed to the internet? Document the systems as well as the maintenance tasks. You need to actually have a list of what you're running, why you're running, and then what all the maintenance that's being done. That becomes very invaluable. I always call it the cement truck syndrome. If I get run over by a cement truck tomorrow, I want someone else to be able to come into my seat, sit down, look at my documentation, figure out what's going on, and go from there. What antivirus is installed? Is it up to date? Perform the updates on the software, apply patches to your software, check your system resources, your CPU, your memory, your hard drive. These are things you need to be doing on your system, and you actually need to know what systems you have out there. What about your firewalls? What's the version of firmware? How are they configured? I've walked into a lot of places, well, it's there, it's been configured for a long time, I really don't know anything at all about it. If you have outside consultants configuring your firewalls, that's okay. but I would request a documentation with print screens and other things, so that way you at least have an idea. So if you have to break with that vendor, you can go and change the passwords, and you at least have a starting point of knowing what's been done and why. What are they allowing onto the network and why? What about your switches? What about your printers? The firmware, the web interface. I'd highly recommend disabling a lot of the web interface, because FTP on most of the HP printer stuff, they're completely insecure. They can be used as a hacking launch pad to go to something else. And there's step-by-step YouTube videos on places like irongeek.com and a bunch of other places that show you how to do it. SNMP, if you're using SNMP, really, it's time to move to version 3. So if you're using version 1 and 2, it's just too wide open, and please tell me you're not using Telnet. With my Droid phone, I can run Telnet. And running Telnet, I can sit here and scan your network, or I can use Wireshark, which I can run from my cell phone, so you don't even realize that you don't think I have a laptop, but I've got my cell phone with Wireshark on it. And I'm running Wireshark. I can see if you're telnetting your switches, and then I can see the passwords, and I can sit there and telnet lock you out of your switches, and I have full control of your system, or somebody else does. It's just something that can be done, because basically the mobile phones are a mobile computer. Understand and document your physical to virtual. You need to understand, how many virtual machines am I running on this physical machine? I've had some people say, oh, I lost a server. Oh, okay. Well, now we've got a bunch of things that aren't working. Well, how many virtual servers were on that? Were the servers all on local hard drives? Were they going back to a back-end network attached storage? Were they on a SAN? All these type of things. A lot of people don't even know where their virtual servers are. Troubleshooting VPNs. First thing you need to do to find out who is affected. Is it one person? Is it multiple people? Determine whether the users can establish a VPN connection at all. Are they getting a partial connection? Are they not able to get in? Are some of them able to get in? Look for policies that may be preventing the connectivity. Did we change something on the back end in Active Directory? We said, oh, no, we limited their VPN connectivity. Don't forget about the client machine, because you have no idea what they've clicked on and what kind of stuff they've installed on their local machine. Check to see if the user can log on locally. See if they're behind some type of firewall that's a funky firewall that won't let the VPN connection go out. Check your network access protection. If you're running Server 2008, the NAP can really get you into trouble at times. Try accessing various resources on the network, and try accessing resources by IP name. I've had so many people who've had issues with DNS, and they never knew they had issues with DNS. So we said, let's just type in the IP number for this printer or this switch, and let's see if we can get to it, or this server. Oh, now it's working fine. But they go and they're trying to get to it through its UNC path. Well, it's not working. They have a DNS issue. Is the connection not working, or is it just painfully slow? Let's look at some security issues we should fix today, and they're not that hard. First of all, unauthorized smartphones on your wireless network. If you're running a guest network, then that's fine, but make sure it's separate from your production network, and make sure that that's where if you're allowing people to have cell phone access on them. Are open ports on your printers. Like I said, printers are a major jumping off point for someone who knows what they're doing, and it doesn't take much because they're step-by-step videos. Custom web applications with bad code. Oh, I've seen this so many times. I've even made one or two myself. And I go back and look at that and say, oh yeah, let's get rid of that. Social network spoofing. It's so easy to do. Make sure if there's any sites, and there's a lot of places you can deal with whoever your who your web filter people are, making sure that you're not going to spoofing sites. Employees downloading illegal movies and music. Again, if this is coming to your system, you are ultimately responsible. That's something you can fix. It's harder to do in a collegiate environment. I know they throw big fits, but in a K-12 we ought to be able to limit that and get rid of that. SMS spoofs and malware infections. Disable Telnet SNMP version 1 at least. Top web hacks of 2010. Now, we're going to look at last year as a year in review, and these are just things you need to be aware of. There's an ASP.NET cookie vulnerability that has been discovered that can basically change stuff and leave a vulnerability wide open on the machine. There's every cookie, which is basically JavaScript to hide 8 different cookies on your browser. There's hacking autocomplete, which is a script that forces autocomplete to hand over personal information. There's the attacking HTTPS with a cache injection. And again, if you go look at DEF CON papers, there's all types of stuff out there, how this can be used step by step. A lot of it's already been turned into scripts, kiddie stuff, so anybody who can point and click on an icon can do this. You can bypass the browser CSRF protections with clickjacking and HTTP parameter pollution. And then Internet Explorer 8 has this great little cross-site scripting thing that's supposed to keep us safe. Well, it actually opens up a whole set of vulnerabilities. And again, I just say use Mozilla Firefox if at all possible. I like it a lot better. There's a HTTP post DOS denial of service hack that was being used last year very successfully. Java Snoop, which basically communicates with Java Snoop test applications for security weaknesses. There's a CSS history hijack for Firefox without JavaScript for internet port scanning. A Java applet DNS rebinding. That just gives you some of the hacking stuff that was the top 10 of 2010. Now I want to talk to you about help desk systems, but actually before we do this, we are going to take a quick jump because I want to show you something. Okay, on the help desk systems, and what I've got here on the right side is a couple links just to kind of give you an idea of what SpiceWorks can do. Like again, like I told you before, SpiceWorks is free. It's a great help desk software. I use it. A lot of my friends use it. Very, very powerful. It can give you alerts automatically when through email. For example, if the toner's low on the color copier or the color printer, you can get it down. You can have it auto-generate help desk tickets, which then you can have sent to the business office or whoever does the purchasing. When you're looking at help desk systems, you need to know what your budget is. My budget was nothing. So I knew I needed a free help desk system. Now I did use one that was a paid product for a while. It was really fairly inexpensive. I wanted a web interface. I wanted something that could work through email. So prioritize the features that you need, which I wanted email access. I want to be able to close tickets out from my phone. Again, SpiceWorks gave me that, and at the price for nothing. Yes, there's a little ad on the right side. I don't really care. My users never see that because they're actually not logging into the portal. It does have a web portal that they could log in, but it's just so much easier for my users to just use email. And that's where you want to check your email compatibility. Think in a database. I can pull this database. I can see what all I've done. I can see the changes. I can look over time. Don't forget the security of the system. You do want to make sure that what you're putting in there is secure. If you're going to be putting passwords in there, which we recommend you never put passwords in a help desk system, but if you do, you want to make sure that it's been secured and it's not vulnerable to cross-site scripting and all these other stuff we've been talking about. Personalize your email templates. Again, you can do this in SpiceWorks. It's just a common feature in all of them. Consider a need for web interface, evaluate ticket management features. I can auto-assign tickets by title and by functions to different people. Make sure you can brand it and make sure it's easy. And again, like I said, for me, SpiceWorks did all of these. It was free, and it's a very slick product. Let's look at some VMware tweaks. I recommend using Veeam Fast SCP. And I use that with the unsupported mode. I go into VMware, go into unsupported, and use the SSH SCP access. I do it on the 4.0, 4.1. Then I can download all my virtual machines, and I don't have to pay for the big VMware infrastructure. I can use ESXi free. I've got my license, and I'm able to download my stuff. Yeah, I've lost some of the automation. I've lost some of the automatic, all the servers failed. They've automatically moved over to here. When you have a large environment and you can afford that, that's great. For us, we're a smaller environment, so it's a little bit more of a manual process. But you can even schedule, Veeam Fast SCP can schedule automatic backups. So you just have them shut down the machines and it'll do an automatic backup for you. Use VMware tools. Defrag your virtual disk. Notice this is in red. This is something a lot of people forget. It's something I highly recommend. Disable Windows Visual Effects. Why do you need iCandy on servers anyways? I don't know, but some people try to keep it there. Get rid of it. You'll save overhead. Run VMware in full screen mode. Control-Alt-Enter. It just is so much easier for me to be able to see stuff, especially as I'm getting older. My eyes, I like to be able to see it in full screen. Disable the CD-ROM in VMware. You're saving yourself boot up time. You're saving yourself just a lot of resources because you're not even using it 99% of the time. If you need to, then you enable it. But disable it. Disable the floppy drive if you still have it listed. Separate out your virtual swap files onto separate virtual disk if you have to swap. Hopefully you have enough RAM you don't have to. Split virtual disk among multiple hard drives. Remember, it's still a matter of counting spindles. The more spindles you have, yes, I can go buy one large 3 terabyte hard drive. And I've got one spindle that's got all my data on it. Well, instead I would rather have 3 1 terabytes and have it spread over 3 spindles for read-write time, unless you're able to do solid-state drives when you've got more budget than I've got. Upgrade your hard drives, upgrade your CPU, and upgrade your RAM. Those are the things that get hit the most. I also use network cards with the TCP offline, where it's automatically billing the server packets. There's a difference between home network cards and server network cards. And on VMware, I highly recommend you get the server brand. If you need to debunk internet hoaxes, what I've listed here is there's 10 sites here that are really good. Out of all of them, Symantec is the one where I say I have a love-hate relationship. Sometimes they put out a patch for something that nobody else does very quickly sometimes, but they're very bloated. So it's a love-hate relationship. But a lot of these sites here, I've put them in here. If you want to go find out whether something's real, someone's sending a chain mail, is this really true? Here's a list of sites for you to go find that out. I've also pushed this out to our staff. Using remote access. If you've never used Backtrack, I highly recommend it. And then you need to remember that security can be done through these remote operating systems. You can run Backtrack off a USB. I can boot from USB. I can do all my stuff from a nice little netbook. You never know that I've even been there. And then you say, I need your computer. I pull up my jump drive, give it to you. It boots into Windows 7. You have no idea that it was ever using Backtrack. Mobile devices, iPhones, iTouch, there's a whole bunch of stuff. The Droid. I've seen a PlayStation 2 used before with Backtrack loaded on it and with the Metasploit framework on it. So just to kind of give you an idea, you really don't know if someone's got something on them, some type of personal computing device, it could be used for good or for evil. That's just something you need to remember. Troubleshooting slow PCs. Usually if it's overheating, I've seen the processor overheating because, I don't know about you, but I've come underneath the registrar's computer that has not been touched in like 5 years. You open it up and it's like a huge dust ball. Vacuuming them out, using the canned air, making sure the CPU fans actually are spinning. The little mouse is spinning, the hamster is still going. Those are the things you want to check on your computers. And that'll give random blue screens. Bad RAM will also do it. Bad hard drive will give you blue screen of death just for no apparent reason. These are some things if you're having some weird funky issues. Again, there's a checklist. You can do this and go over this. It's on my website. Disk type and interface. The BIOS settings, I do try to upgrade the BIOS annually on all of our machines. Windows services. A runaway process. Disk fragmentation. Again, defragmenting is very important. The background applications. File system issues and display options. I never allow automatic updates of Windows graphics drivers to get pushed through my Windows update process. I always do those manually because more times than not I've had them come around, people can't see anything on their screen. So these are some things just to think about as you're trying to figure out what's going on with some computers, or if you've got computers that are slow on your network. Avoid viruses and spyware. The number one most important thing, in my opinion, is to spend time training your users and staff on a regular basis. More than once a year. You need to just go over again, remind them not to be clicking on stuff, don't download that pretty picture, that pretty font, that silly movie from an untrusted site. Install quality antivirus software. It doesn't always cost big money. There's some really good free options. We do use paid products, but there are some decent free options. Keep your anti-malware applications current. Perform daily scans. Disable auto run. Disable image previews in Outlook. Don't click on email links or attachments if you don't know what they are, if you're not expecting them. And train your staff the same. Serve smart. Use hardware-based firewalls and softwares on your local software firewalls on your local systems. Deploy DNS protection. Again, another plug for moving to Server 2008. You can do a more secure DNS system. Here's a set of Windows shortcut keys. You can come back and look at this PowerPoint later. This PowerPoint will be on my website. These are ones that I use a lot, and I know a lot of my friends also use. Help PCs run better. Auto Runs is a great program for showing you everything that's running on your system and then turning it off. CC cleaner, the crap cleaner. I used a portable version personally, and it goes through and gets rid of all the stuff that's off the computer. Ruvico can save your behind. I call it my donut fund because we're able to restore pictures, especially for people in the yearbook or one of the other band or one of the other groups. We've done it multiple times. PC Decrapifier lists all third-party software and makes a restore point, so if you accidentally delete something, you can go back and restore it. WinPortal has a large database of apps, so that way you actually know, oh, if I uninstall this, what is this? Before I uninstall this particular DLL or this service, what does it go to? Oh, it goes to this. I need that. So it does a really good job of telling you what something is before you get rid of it. Some useful utilities that I like to use. There's some registry cleaners. I use PuTTY and SSH, FileZilla, VMware virtualization. I use Veeam. Veeam also has a monitor product on here that I've used. Paint.net is great. We do have Photoshop, a site license at our school, but I like Paint.net for some things too. And Paint.net's free. You can give it out to your students. ColorPick is a superb pop-up color picker control, and I've used that for what color? I'm on this web page and they've got this really cool color and I just don't know what it is. I want to match it. I've used ColorPick. Firebug for debugging, and Keep Password as a password manager. I highly recommend that you have a password manager. Easy website testing. NetSparker delivers great ability. It is a free product. Now they have a community side, then they have a paid side. I've used a community product. If you want just an all-in-one piece of software that will test your website and it'll see if you got SQL injection vulnerabilities, it'll look for several of the known ones. Again, I use the free side. There is a paid side. It is a very good product and it's very easy to use. There's step-by-step tutorials on YouTube. Live CDs and virtual machines. Again, I use Backtrack. And here's a couple other Linux options where you can use for testing, specifically for web pen testing or corporation forensics if you need to use that. Staying up to date on trends and exploits. Here are some different sites that I go to when I'm trying to find out, hey, what's happening with the latest in security. And I've just listed them here for you. Security checklists and certifications for requirements, national security, SARMSB, PCI, common criteria. You know, these are different sites where you can go check and see. Now, this is definitely more on the corporate side, but some of this applies to academic and education too. Operating system hardening. There's a great, what I've got here is a list of some of the sites, specifically if you're doing Red Hat, if you're doing Debian, if you're doing SUSE. This is more on the Linux side than Windows Server 2003 Security Guide, and I've also listed the 2008 already before. That's kind of the Linux and some of the older Windows for you. Known vulnerabilities and upgoing updates. Here's just another set of. I appreciate your time. I hope that you're able to download these. Again, just to show you really quickly, if we jump over to my Firefox, underneath, when you come to my site, you come to seminars and you come to academia. In here you will see all of the list. I'm just going to go ahead and close this out. You will see the list of resources I've pulled together. I've put my CHD or Computer Help Desk checklist, my network checklist, my staff checklist, internal audits, and GCA form checklist here. You can download them. If you have any questions, please email me, and I will do my best to answer as quick as I can. Thank you so much for your time.